our dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of our newsroom, where we bring you the latest in the world of politics, economy, as well as the world of sports. I'm Hissy Rabia, and we'll start with our news bulletin. Abdel al-Sisi received on Saturday Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, President of the United Arab Emirates, who was on a short visit to Egypt. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Mohamed al-Shinnawi said the visit comes in light of the brotherly ties that bind the two nations, as President Sisi held an iftar banquet to his UAE counterpart. The two leaders discussed ways to boost historic bilateral relations to meet the aspiration of the two peoples. On his social media page, President Sisi wrote that he was glad to receive his brother Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, adding that they discussed a number of regional issues. For his part, bin Zayed hailed warm reception, stressing the deep-rooted Egyptian-Emirati relations. President Abdel al-Sisi on Sunday met visiting Eritrean Foreign Minister Othman Saleh in the attendance of Minister of Foreign Migration and Egyptian Expatriate Affairs Badr Abdel. Eritrean Saleh conveyed message to President Sisi from his Eritrean counterpart Sias Afwerki, which denoted his desire to enhance bilateral ties in all fields. The meeting touched on developments in the African Horn through coordinating efforts to boost the stability in the region, as well as a three-way coordination mechanism with Somalia. Both sides agreed on combating terrorism and maintaining the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Somalia. Minister of Foreign Affairs, Immigration and Expatriates Badr Abdel held on Saturday phone calls with his Iranian and Lebanese counterpart Abbas Arakchi and Youssef Raji. Raji and Abdel discussed the latest developments in southern Lebanon, which could jeopardize regional stability, warning of sinking into a vicious circle of conflict. Abdel renewed Egypt's stance of supporting the Lebanese state and its national institutions in front of all security challenges and full rejection of any moves that hurt the people and stability of its people, as well as the necessity to stop hostile deeds and full withdrawal of the Israeli occupation forces. With his Iranian counterpart, Abdel also tackled the deeply regional development, whether in Lebanon or Yemen, stressing the importance of self-restraint in this critical period and to refrain from taking any step that might fuel the situation. Egypt's top diplomat also highlighted the need of protecting the Red Sea navigation freedom, pointing to the huge damages suffered by the Egyptian economy with the sharp decrease in the Suez Canal revenues. He moreover asserted the need of working on cementing ceasefire in Gaza and regaining regional stability. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration Badr Abdel hailed continuous coordination between Egypt and the EU on regional and international issues. Addressing a press conference with visiting EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas after their talks in Cairo on Sunday, the top diplomat hailed the EU support to the Egyptian plan for the reconstruction of Gaza.
Affairs, Migration and Egyptian Expatriates Badr Abdel held a press conference with visiting EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas after their talks in Cairo on Sunday. Welcoming Kallas on her first visit to Egypt as Foreign Policy Chief of the EU, the Foreign Minister hailed continuous coordination between Egypt and the EU on regional and international issues. Abdel said the talks discussed the strategic partnership with the EU and the upcoming summit later this year, as well as the ongoing cooperation over fighting illegal migration. Over the Middle East, the top diplomat said he reviewed the Egyptian plan for the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip and preparations for the upcoming Cairo conference on Gaza reconstruction, hailing EU support to the plan. He hinted to intensive efforts in collaboration with Qatar and the US to restore truce in the Gaza Strip and to put an end to the Israeli aggression against unarmed civilians there. The foreign minister asserted that the ceasefire agreement signed in January should be respected and implemented, and negotiations should be launched on its second phase. Abdel asserted that a return to the negotiations and commitment to the ceasefire should be the sole ways for saving and releasing all hostages. The top diplomat said he looks forward to more European support for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and for the two-state solution in the region. Over the situation in Syria, the foreign minister reiterated Egypt's unwavering and full support to the Syrian people and asserted the importance of maintaining Syrian integrity, territorial sovereignty and state institutions. Abdel also said that the talks dealt with the dangerous Israeli escalations in Lebanon despite a November ceasefire. For her part, EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaya Kallas said she appreciated the Egyptian efforts for reaching a ceasefire aimed at the grave repercussions of the war across the region.
And to shed more light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Dr. Mohamed Abdel Halim, our political analyst. Dr. Abdel Halim, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, ma'am.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Dr. Abdel Halim, Foreign Minister Badr Abdel hailed the continuous coordination between Egypt and the EU on regional and international issues. How do you assess the recent coordination between Egypt and the EU in the latest regional crises, sir?
Right. Indeed, Dr. Badr Abdel, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Immigration and Expatriates, did hold a very successful meeting, actually, with, Kallas, the Supreme Representative of Foreign Affairs and Security Policies yesterday, for the consultation and the examination of a large number of bilateral relations between Egypt as much as the European Union, and reaching to the latest development and results, actually, on both regional and international levels, actually, of joint interest. It was a very much successful sort of meeting in which Dr. Badr Abdel actually did refer to the extreme sense of upsurge, actually, in the framework of the bilateral relations between Egypt and the European Union, and in the meantime looking for the continuation of working together successfully with the Supreme Representative, that's Kaya Kallas, so to speak, to fortify and stabilize this sort of cooperation within the consummation of the six axes, actually, of the strategic partnership between both sides. Confirming and concentrating there and then on the importance of the deep interest and the main concern, actually, of the economic side in this strategic partnership, including the credence of, the second, back of the European Monetary Fund that would reach to around €4. Indeed, Dr. Badr Abdel actually did examine during the sort of the consultation meeting in the meantime, the large number of responsibilities that Egypt would carry there and then, and its own confirmation of the hospitalization of millions and millions of refugees, immigrants, actually, living a very decent and very modern sort of life, respectable, so to speak, actually, not intense as it might have been in any other places, as much as in the meantime referring to and concentrating to the existing cooperation between Egypt and the European Union in the very important field, which is the field of fighting terrorism, and in the meantime the assumption of the Egyptian state, the joint chairmanship of that sort of World Terrorism Forum that seems to be quite occupying very much important placed at the present time. Of course, on top of the discussions and the examinations, on the top of the priorities that came to be regarded, occupying pride of place is, the two-state solution and the Gaza Strip and the Palestinian cause and the sort of the development that did occur lastly in Gaza Strip, a sort of a situation in which Dr. Abdel, the foreign minister, actually confirmed the importance of the fixation and the continuation of the stoppage of the, the fire, the ceasefire, so to speak, and in the meantime, working side by side with the European Union to put an end for the Israeli aggression, actually, that was to be maximized during the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks. In much the same way that Dr. Abdel actually, did examine the sort of the outcomes that the Arab League did reach during the course of the last week and the exceptional Arab Summit, or the extraordinary Arab Summit held in Cairo, 3rd of last March, to reconstruct the Gaza Strip, inviting the European Union very much actively and straightforwardly to participate in the conciliation, actually, as much as in the participation of reconstructing Gaza Strip, and in the meantime to be part and parcel, actually, of a conference that Egypt will be intending, actually, to start during the course of the 2 next weeks, actually. Of course, this is very much important nowadays because in the light of the development and the escalation and the seriousness, actually, of the problematic situation that did occur in the Middle East, particularly when America actually would recruit the maximal number of, weaponry, of modern technological aspects in the area since the aggression on Iraq, that 2003, of vessels, of ships, of aircrafts, of Harry Truman, the aircraft, and Ali Burke, situated in the area of the Red Sea. Within 2 weeks, actually, there will be the arrival and advent of another carrier, a massive one indeed, that is Carl Vinson, including F-35 and F-18. And in the meantime, the arrival of Gerald Ford, all these, fighters and all these modern technological aspects of modern weaponry, actually, very much fatalistic, actually, in addition to the a couple of submarines that will be reaching to the, to the area. All these things would give us a clear indication of how dire the situation is and the fortification of the, of the Arab case within the solidification of the Palestinian cause, with the view of reaching to a permanent ceasefire, perpetuating the ceasefire, so to speak, as much as to try to, approach to negotiative route instead of any sort of military interference of military action. This is as far as the Gaza Strip is concerned, and in the meantime, there was a very successful discussion about, the situation in Syria. In the meantime, an examination of the situation in Syria that would give us a clear indication of how Dr. Abdel was very much concerned about the fortification and stabilization of the Egyptian state for the Syrian people, pushing them towards the negotiative road and the road of peace, and achieving the aspirations and the dreams of the Syrian people of reaching to, a sense of safety and security, a sense of tranquility and peace of mind, under the cooperation of almost all the Arab countries in the meantime, without any alienation, without any sense of exclusion on the part of any, other country, with the view of reaching to stability and security in Syria. Much the way that the examination did tackle the south of Lebanon problem, in a case in which Dr. Abdel in the meantime was very much aware of the previous developments that the Lebanese state did occur during the course of the last 2 weeks. A very much important situation in which he confirmed the stability of the Egyptian state, actually, and the pushing forward of the Lebanese state. In the meantime, pushing it to security and confronting the challenges and the extreme sense of menaces and attacks, confirming there and then actually the consummation and the abiding by of the agreement of the ceasefire and the inimical, atrocities actually within the south of Lebanon, and the withdrawal, instantaneous and absolute and the comprehensive sense of withdrawal of the Israeli troops from the south of Lebanon for the consummation of the codes of 1701 on both sides without any sense of selection. All these things were to be examined to a great extent, in much the same way that Dr. Badr al-Ati, the foreign minister, was very much concerned in the meantime to discuss the problematic situation of the Horn of Africa and the security of, the Red Sea and the Egyptian maritime safety and security, the sort of, maritime security that was to be badly influenced actually by the attacks and the previous inimical attitudes on the part of the Houthi rebels and, on the Red Sea, the sort of the account that would minimize the profits and revenues of the Egyptian state to less than half of it. All these issues were to be examined to a greater extent on the part of the very much successful sort of meeting that was to be held yesterday between Dr. Badr al-Ati and Kaya Kallas, actually representative of, the Supreme Representative, actually. All these examinations would seem to be consummating and reaching to the inevitable conclusion at the end of the day that there wouldn't be any sense of aggression or suppression or oppression that would afflict the Palestinian people. In much the same way that, the representation and the confirmation of the presidential authorities, very much important confirmation, which is no for relocation, for suppression and oppression of the Palestinian people, and the cooperation there and then with the view of reaching to a permanent ceasefire, the sort of the situation that the Egyptian presidency actually did adopt since day one, actually, to put them in for the 7th of October, Aqsa flood problematic situation. And in the meantime, stabilizing the situation in the Western Bank, in Lebanon, in the Horn of the Cape, and in the meantime pushing the international community with the view of the unification of reaching to an inevitable conclusion, which is the negotiative road and road of peace to achieve the sense of safety and security for almost all concerned.
Yes. Dr. Abdel Halim, Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul Gheit said that the Arab League was the Arabs' voice along 80 years and was always a front of defending the Palestinian cause over decades. How do you assess this statement, and what do you expect here to witness in the coming days with the resumption of violence and aggression and the genocide war by Israel?
Indeed, this is, a sort of a situation that had been adopted since more than 70 years on the part of the Egyptian state, actually, day after day, year after year, lapse of centuries and lapse of years, actually. The Egyptian state did represented unified, single individual sort of attitude towards the Palestinian cause, which is the confirmation of the negotiation of reaching to the two-state solution from day one. Mr. Ahmed Abul Gheit actually words would represent in the meantime the confirmation and the ability of the Egyptian state and the sense of confidence actually to reach to a peaceful environment. In the meantime, it was an invitation to stop the violence, to the sort of permanent ceasefire and the separation of a two-state solution actually within the whole era and within the whole territorial land, because this is one of the very much aggressive situations that would face the Palestinians, which is the lack of the homeland, which is the sense of the homelessness and being expatriates for quite a long period of time, more than 1 year and a half actually to be represented and to be appreciated actually for almost the people who would sacrifice the most precious thing that they possess, which is their own lives. And in the meantime, the Abul Ghait's words actually would give us a clear indication of how peace is still possible at the present time situation, and there is still a time for the stoppage of, you know, I mean, the usual sense of inimical attacks between both sides, and with the view of reaching to the permanent peace on the Palestinian state, with the view to reaching to, at the end of the day, the two-state solution on the borderlines of the 4th of June 1967.
Yes. Dr. Mohamed Abdel Halim, our political analyst, thank you so much for your precious input, and we'll go to a short break, and after that we'll be back to continue our program. Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul Ghait said that the Arab League was the Arabs' voice along 80 years and was always the fort of defending a fair cause, and that had an Arab consensus without any doubt over decades, which is the Palestinian cause that is currently facing the most dangerous and powerful threat to liquidate it. Abul Ghait pointed that the Arab League was always the organization to which everyone belongs to the Arab civilization and culture, and is looking forward to the Arab common future, and was always a friend against attempts to change the identity of the region. More than 300 casualties flooded into Nasser Hospital. Like other medical facilities around Gaza, it had been damaged by Israeli raids and strikes throughout the war, leaving it without key equipment. It was also running short on antibiotics and other essentials on March 2nd. When the first 6-week phase of the ceasefire technically expired, Israel blocked entry of medicine, food and other supplies to Gaza.
Paramedics and emergency medical teams from Palestine Red Crescent have been responding in Gaza after airstrikes. Medical facilities across the Gaza Strip are overwhelmed. The recent bombardments are compounding a desperate situation. As of 7 a.m. on Sunday in Gaza, Palestine Red Crescent teams have responded to 149 fatalities and 179 injuries. Women and children were among the casualties. Areas around Gaza, Rafah and Khan Yunis have been the hardest hit. The last 16 months have already left Gaza's health service severely damaged. No humanitarian aid had entered Gaza for more than 17 days. This includes medical supplies, medicines and fuel. Without these vital supplies, it's becoming increasingly difficult for the Palestine Red Crescent to provide life-saving treatment and run its ambulance service. Of its fleet of 53 ambulances, only 23 are now operating because there is not enough gasoline. There have also been no food, water, blankets, clothing, tents and other critical aid supplies entering Gaza since the border crossings closed on the 2nd of March. Hostilities must end. With renewed violence comes a greater danger and suffering, making survival even more difficult for the people of Gaza. The IFRC reiterated their calls for protection of civilians, humanitarians, and healthcare workers and facilities. The Red Cross, Red Crescent, and Red Crystal emblems must be respected and protected, and all parties must ensure the safety of those providing humanitarian aid. Safe and unhindered access for aid and essential services everywhere in the Gaza Strip. The opening of all available border crossings to ensure a continuous and expanded flow of humanitarian aid, including medical supplies and food and fuel into Gaza. The immediate and unconditional release of all hostages.
Thousands of Israelis demonstrated in Tel Aviv against the decision by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government to dismiss the head of the Shin Bet domestic intelligence service and resume fighting in Gaza. Netanyahu said this week he has lost confidence in Ronen Bar, who has led Shin Bet since 2021 and intended to fire him effective on the 10th of April, prompting 3 days of protest. Israel's Supreme Court issued an injunction on Friday temporarily freezing the dismissal. Netanyahu has dismissed accusation the decision was politically motivated, but his critics have accused him of undermining the institution underpinning Israel's democracy by seeking Barr's removal. In Tel Aviv's Habima Square, protesters waved blue and white Israeli flags and called for a deal that would see the release of the remaining Israeli hostages being held in Gaza. Sudan's military said Saturday it seized several key buildings in central Khartoum from paramilitary control after Army Chief Abdel al-Burhan promised full liberation following a recapture of the presidential palace. Sudanese army spokesman Nabil Abdullah said the military was continuing to pressure the rapid support forces throughout the city center, giving a list of buildings recaptured, including the central bank, state intelligence headquarters, and Sudan National Museum. Sudan's national institutions in the city center were all overrun and looted by paramilitary in the first weeks after fighting erupted in April 2023. In a video shared by the army on Saturday, Army Chief al-Burhan said his forces were advancing with steady steps toward the full liberation of Sudan, saying that the battle is not over and that they will continue. Ethiopia's army said on Friday its troops had killed more than 300 fighters from the Fano armed group in 2 days of clashes in northern Amhara region, as fears have emerged of a wider regional war. The Fano militia fought alongside the army and Eritrean forces in a 2-year civil war that pitted Addis Ababa against the Tigrayan People Liberation Front, the TPLF, which controls the northern region of Tigray. Since then, Eritrea and Ethiopia have fallen out. The former was excluded from peace talks to end that war in November 2022. Fears of a new war emerged in recent weeks after Eritrea reportedly ordered a nationwide military mobilization and Ethiopia deployed troops toward their border. Fighting between Ethiopia Army and Fano, a loose collection of militias with no centralized leadership, broke out in July 2023, fueled in part by a sense of betrayal among many Amharas about terms of the 2022 peace deal. And to Turkey, Istanbul's embattled Ekrem İmamoğlu vowed to fight on after being jailed in a graft probe and suspended as mayor on Sunday in a development that have sparked Turkey's worst street unrest in more than a decade. Just 4 days after his arrest in a pre-dawn raid by the hundred of police, the powerful and popular opposition mayor was stripped of his title. His arrest has sparked a massive wave of protests that began in Istanbul but has since spread to at least 55 of Turkey's 81 provinces. Although the court decided against formalizing his arrest in a separate terror probe, the Interior Ministry said he had been suspended from office. The court decision came as the main opposition CHP party held a long-planned primary to elect İmamoğlu as its candidate in the 2028 presidential election. And the U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said on Sunday that President Donald Trump's outreach to Iran's top authority supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on a possible new nuclear deal is an effort to avoid military action. Trump said earlier this month that he had sent a letter to Khamenei warning that there are 2 ways Iran can be handled, militarily or you make a deal, according to Trump. Khamenei rejected the U.S. offer for talks as a deception, saying negotiating with Trump administration would tighten the knot of sanctions and increase pressure on Iran. However, Iran Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said on Thursday that Tehran would soon reply to both the letters, threats and opportunities. He cautioned on Sunday that talks with U.S. are impossible unless Washington changes its pressure policy. New Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and his conservative opponents said U.S. President Donald Trump must respect Canada's sovereignty as they kicked off their election campaign Sunday against the backdrop of a trade war and annexation threats from Trump.
New Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and his Conservative opponent said that the US President Donald Trump must respect the Canadian sovereignty as they kicked off the election campaigns on Sunday against the backdrop of a trade war and annexation threats from Trump. Carney announced that there will be a 5-week election campaign before the vote on April the 28th. The governing Liberals had appeared poised for the historic election defeat this year until Trump declared a trade war. Trump has repeatedly said that Canada should become the 51st US state, and he acknowledged on Friday that he has upended the Canadian politics. Trump's almost daily attacks on the Canadian sovereignty have infuriated the Canadians and led to a surge in the Canadian nationalism that has bolstered the Liberal poll numbers. The election campaign for 343 seats or districts in the House of Commons will last 37 days. Although the other parties are running, the Liberals and the Conservatives are the only two that have a chance to form a government. The party that commands a majority in Parliament, either alone or with the support of another party, will form the next government, and its leader will be Prime Minister. Carney replaced Justin Trudeau, who announced his resignation in January but remained in power until the Liberal Party elected a new leader on March the 9th, following a leadership race by the governing party. The opposition Conservatives hope to make the election about Trudeau, whose popularity declined as food and housing prices rose and the immigration surged. But after decades of the bilateral stability, the vote is now expected to focus on who is best equipped to deal with Trump. Carney said that the choice for the Canadians is a Canadian Trump or a government that unites the country. Trump put 25% tariffs on the Canadian steel and aluminium and is threatening sweeping tariffs on all the Canadian products, as well as all of the American trading partners, on April the 2nd.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul said on Saturday that military cooperation between North Korea and Russia must stop, and North Korea should not be rewarded for its wrongdoings in the course of bringing about the end of the war in Ukraine. Cho also said it is important for South Korea, Japan and China to faithfully carry out UN sanctions against North Korea and to put effort into stopping North Korean provocations and bring about its complete denuclearization. Cho is meeting with the Chinese and Japanese counterparts in Tokyo in the first such trilateral talk since 2023. Japan, South Korea and China agreed on Saturday that peace on the Korean peninsula was a shared responsibility. Seoul's foreign minister said in a meeting of the three countries' top diplomats in which they pledged to promote cooperation.
The top diplomats from Japan, China and South Korea met in Tokyo on Saturday, seeking common ground on East Asian security and the economic issues amid escalating global uncertainty. At the start of the meeting in Tokyo with the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and the South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul, Japanese Foreign Minister Takeshi Iyawa said that given the increasingly severe international situation, he believes they may truly be at a turning point in history. The three agreed to accelerate the preparations for a trilateral summit in Japan this year that would also include talks on how Tokyo, Beijing and Seoul can tackle declining birth rates and aging populations. The first gathering of the country's foreign ministers since 2023 comes as the US President Donald Trump upends the decades-old alliances, potentially opening the door for China to forge closer ties to countries traditionally aligned with Washington. Wang said that China wants to resume the free trade talks with the neighbors and expand the memberships of the 15-nation regional comprehensive economic partnership. However, deep divisions remain. Beijing is at odds with Tokyo and Seoul on several key issues, including the support of North Korea, its intensifying military activity around Taiwan, and its backing of Russia in the war with Ukraine. US allies Japan and South Korea, which each host thousands of US troops, share Washington's view that China, the world's second largest economy, poses a growing threat to the regional security. Chu said that he had asked China in the meeting to help persuade North Korea to abandon the nuclear weapons.
And to our economic news, where Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouri on Sunday witnessed the national conference held by the National Initiative for Smart Green Projects for announcing the winning project in the third session of the initiative. The conference was held at the new administrative capital and organized by the Ministry of Planning and International Cooperation. It is addressed by several ministers, including local development and environment ministers, as well as UN organizations and private sector and civil society stakeholders, as well as development partners. Prime Minister Madbouri and Planning Minister Rania Mashat honored the development of the winning project at the third National Initiative for Smart Green Projects. Minister of Planning, Economic Development and International Cooperation Rania Mashat said the fruitful collaboration between Egypt and Japan has led to constructive and significant partnership in many strategic areas, contributing to promoting human capital investment and infrastructure development to support inclusive and sustainable growth. Al-Mashat made the remarks during a meeting with the chief representative for the Middle East at the Japan Bank of International Cooperation GBIC Kani Kitamura at the bank premises in Dubai. The two sides discussed ways of boosting collaboration in sustainable development, international finance and investment fields. Highlighting the vital role of the GBIC in the Middle East, Al-Mashat hailed its contribution to the Nexus of Water, Food and Energy and WAFE program, which aims to accelerate Egypt's national climate agenda. Al-Mashat said the Egyptian government is keen to foster cooperation with the bank to speed up the country's energy transition and support the green hydrogen project for a clean energy industry.